The words stung more than I expected as I walked back to my car, the afternoon sun beating down on my shoulders. There was a time when my father, Thaddeus Castleton, wouldn't have dreamed of speaking to me that way. A time when I was his brilliant girl, his pride and joy. But that was before my marriage to Barrett failed, before I became a single mother to Lily, before I became the family disappointment. I sat in my car for several minutes, keys in the ignition, but unable to start the engine. The house I'd just left, my childhood home, loomed in the rearview mirror. The sprawling Victorian on Mulberry Street had been in our family for 4 generations. I'd learned to ride a bike in that driveway, had my first kiss on that porch, returned there after college with a hard-earned law degree that had made my father beam with pride. And now, I'd returned the keys, symbolically closing the door on the relationship that had shaped me. My phone buzzed with a text from my older sister, Cordelia. "How did it go with Dad?" I didn't answer. What could I say? That our father had recoiled at the sight of his granddaughter as if she were a stain on the family name? That he'd treated my divorce like a personal affront, a deliberate attack on the Castleton reputation? That he'd banned me from his 70th birthday celebration as if I were a stranger who'd wandered in off the street? The drive back to my apartment took 20 minutes, but it felt like crossing an ocean. I kept replaying his words, his expression of disgust, the way he'd flinched when Lily had reached for him. My 4-year-old daughter had only wanted a hug from her grandfather. Instead, she'd received a lesson in rejection that no child should have to learn. Lily was with my neighbor, Mrs. Devereaux, a retired kindergarten teacher, who watched her when I had appointments. I collected my daughter, thanked Mrs. Devereaux profusely, and walked the 3 flights up to our small apartment. "Did Grandpa like my drawing?" Lily asked as I unlocked our door. She'd spent the morning creating a birthday card for my father, complete with wobbly letters and an abundance of glitter that now sparkled on her cheeks. I hesitated, unwilling to break her heart. "He was very busy today, sweetheart." "We'll give it to him another time." Lily's face fell momentarily before brightening again with the resilience only children possess. "Can we have spaghetti for dinner? With the red sauce?" "Of course we can." I forced a smile, grateful for the change of subject. Later, after Lily was asleep, I sat at our small kitchen table with a glass of wine and my laptop open to our bank account. The numbers stared back at me, cold and unforgiving. My legal secretary job paid the bills. Barely, but there was little left over for extras. The child support from Barrett helped, but it was inconsistent at best, non-existent at worst. I opened another window on my computer, checking an account at a different bank. This one showed a much healthier balance, but it wasn't money I could touch. Not yet. Not until everything was finalized. My phone rang, startling me. Cordelia's name flashed on the screen. "Why didn't you tell me?" she demanded the moment I answered. "Tell you what?" I took a sip of wine, already exhausted by whatever storm was brewing. "That Dad threw you out, that he banned you from his birthday party. I just got off the phone with him, and he was ranting about how you've brought shame to the family name and how he can't bear to look at you. What happened?" I sighed, rubbing my temple where a headache was forming. "I asked him for help, Cord. Just a small loan to get through the next few months until I can find a better job. He acted like I'd asked him to fund a criminal enterprise. Well, you know how he feels about your divorce." "Yes, I'm quite aware of his feelings on the matter." My tone was sharper than I intended. Apparently, staying with a man who cheated repeatedly and emptied our savings for business investments would have been the honorable choice. "I'm not defending him," Cordelia said quickly. "I'm just saying that I should have expected this, that I deserved to be treated like a pariah because my marriage failed." "No, Ilara. I'm saying that Dad is stuck in his ways, and you've always been the one to challenge him. That puts you both on a collision course." I took another sip of wine. "Did you know he refused to even look at Lily?" his own granddaughter. Cordelia was quiet for a moment. He told me you brought her with you to guilt him into giving you money. The wine turned bitter in my mouth. Is that what he thinks? That I'm using my child as leverage? My free hand clenched into a fist. Lily was with me because my babysitter canceled last minute. She spent the morning making him a birthday card. Oh, Elle! You know what? It doesn't matter. I'm done trying to please him. I returned his house keys. You what? Cordelia's shock was evident. But, Elle, those keys, they're symbolic. Dad gave them to us when Mom died. It's like I'm no longer part of the family? Apparently, that's already been decided for me. I glanced at the kitchen doorway, making sure Lily was still asleep. You should have seen his face, Cord. The disgust, the disappointment. I won't subject Lily or myself to that again. Let me talk to him, Cordelia offered. He's being unreasonable. Don't bother. You'll only make it worse. I drained my glass. Besides, I have other options. Things Dad doesn't know about. What does that mean? Cordelia's voice held a note of concern. Nothing. I'm just saying I'm not as desperate as he thinks. I wasn't ready to share the full truth, not even with my sister. I need to go. Early morning tomorrow. After hanging up, I opened my email and typed a message to a contact I'd been corresponding with for months. It was time to accelerate our plans. If my father wanted to cut me off, I would simply have to stand firmly on my own 2 feet, something I'd been preparing for longer than anyone realized. The next morning, I dropped Lily at preschool and headed to the law firm where I worked as a legal secretary. Thornfield, Drake, and Associates specialized in corporate law, which meant endless contracts, mergers, acquisitions, and very little of the justice-oriented law I'd studied in school, but it paid the bills, offered decent health insurance, and allowed me to pick Lily up by 5 each day. Morning, Alara. Vivica, the receptionist, greeted me with a coffee already prepared the way I liked it. Mr. Thornfield wants to see you in his office. I froze halfway through removing my coat. Did he say why? Vivica shook her head. Just that you should come by as soon as you arrive. My stomach tightened with anxiety. In the 3 years I'd worked at the firm, I'd been called to Maxwell Thornfield's office exactly twice. Once when I was hired, and once when I'd received a modest raise last year. I knocked on the imposing oak door at precisely 9 o'clock. Enter, came the clipped response. Maxwell Thornfield was a man who seemed perpetually on the verge of retirement, but never quite reached it. In his 70s, with silver hair and wire-rimmed glasses, he ran the firm with meticulous attention to detail and an old-fashioned sense of propriety. You wanted to see me, sir. I remained standing until he gestured to the chair across from his desk. Yes, Ms. Castleton. I've received some concerning information that I felt we should discuss privately. He removed his glasses and polished them with a handkerchief. A habit I knew signaled discomfort. My mind raced through possibilities. Had I made a mistake on an important document? Was there a client complaint? It has come to my attention that you've been conducting personal business using the firm's resources. He replaced his glasses and fixed me with a stern gaze. The blood drained from my face. Sir, I'm not finished, Ms. Castleton. His tone left no room for interruption. Our IT department flagged unusual activity on your computer. It seems you've been corresponding with Halloran Financial Services regarding a personal matter during business hours. I swallowed hard. Halloran Financial Services, the company I'd been working with to resolve my father's debt situation. The debt he didn't even know I knew about. I can explain, I began, my voice steadier than I felt. I would certainly hope so. You're an exemplary employee, Ms. Castleton, but this firm has strict policies about using company resources for personal matters. It won't happen again, Mr. Thornfield. I assure you. He studied me for a moment. There's more. The nature of your correspondence with Halloran is troubling. Something about debt consolidation and payment arrangements? Are you in some kind of financial trouble, Ms. Castleton? The question hung in the air between us. If I admitted the truth, I risked further scrutiny. If I lied, I risked being caught in that lie. The financial matter isn't mine, I said finally, deciding a partial truth was better than a complete falsehood. It's a family situation I'm helping to resolve. I see. He didn't look entirely convinced. Well, whatever the case, please conduct such business on your own time and using your personal devices. And, Ms. Castleton? Yes, sir? If you are experiencing financial difficulties, the firm has resources available to employees. A confidential financial counseling service, for instance. Thank you, sir, but that won't be necessary. I stood, eager to escape further questioning. Is there anything else? Not at this time. Just remember, this firm's reputation extends to its employees. We must all be above reproach. The implication was clear. Financial troubles suggested poor judgment, and poor judgment had no place at Thornfield Drake and Associates. I returned to my desk, hands trembling slightly as I logged into my computer. I would need to be more careful. The last thing I needed was to lose my job, because I was trying to save my father from his own mistakes, a father who currently wanted nothing to do with me. The irony wasn't lost on me. At lunch, I slipped out to a nearby cafe with outdoor seating where I could make a private call. The representative from Halloran Financial answered on the second ring. Ms. Castleton, I was just about to email you. We've received confirmation that the final payment has been processed. The account has been closed, and the lien release paperwork is being prepared as we speak. Relief washed over me. So it's done? The debt is fully paid off? Yes, ma'am. 5 years of payments, right on schedule. The property is now clear of all encumbrances. Frankly, it's remarkable you managed to pay it all off without the primary debtor ever knowing. That was the point, I said quietly. When will the lien release be officially recorded? The documentation should be processed within 3 business days. After that, there will be no public record connecting Mr. Thaddeus Castleton to the debt. Perfect. Thank you for your discretion in this matter. Of course. It's been a pleasure working with you, Ms. Castleton. Not many daughters would go to such lengths to protect their father's financial reputation. If only he knew, I thought, as I ended the call. My father's financial reputation was precisely what he valued above all else, above family loyalty, above emotional support, even above his relationship with his granddaughter. 5 years ago, when I discovered the truth about my father's gambling problem and the massive debt he'd accrued, I'd faced a choice: confront him directly or handle it quietly. The man who had raised me to value family honor above all else had secretly put our family home, our heritage, at risk to feed an addiction he couldn't control. I chose the latter path, negotiating with creditors, setting up payment plans, working extra jobs, using my legal knowledge to navigate the complex world of debt consolidation. I'd even taken out loans in my own name to make larger payments when necessary, all to preserve my father's precious reputation, all while he continued to lecture me about responsibility and family legacy. And now, just as I'd finally cleared his debt, just when I needed a fraction of the help I'd given him, he'd turned his back on me. I returned to work, the irony of my situation weighing heavily. For 5 years, I'd kept my father's secret, protected his reputation, sacrificed to preserve his dignity. And he had no idea. That evening, I picked up Lily from preschool, her face lighting up when she spotted me at the door. "Mommy, I painted a dinosaur today." She held up a paper smeared with green and purple paint in a shape that, with some imagination, could indeed be a dinosaur. "It's beautiful, sweetheart." I knelt to her level, brushing a strand of dark hair from her face. "Let's put it on the refrigerator when we get home. Can we show Grandpa? He likes dinosaurs." My heart twisted. "Not today, Lily. Grandpa is very busy right now. Her small face crumpled slightly. Is he still mad? Did I do something wrong? No, baby. I pulled her into a tight hug, fighting back tears. You didn't do anything wrong. Grandpa is just working through some grown-up feelings. It's not about you, but it was, in part, about her. My father's shame extended to Lily, an innocent child whose only crime was being born to a mother who'd chosen divorce over martyrdom. At home, I prepared a simple dinner while Lily chattered about her day, her resilience a constant source of wonder. She had adapted to our new life with remarkable ease. The smaller apartment, the absence of her father, the changing dynamic with her grandfather. Children, I'd learned, were far more adaptable than adults gave them credit for. After dinner and bath time, I tucked Lily into bed with her favorite stuffed rabbit, a gift from Barrett before everything fell apart. She insisted on keeping it, despite the associations it held for me. Story time? She asked, her eyelids already heavy. Just a short one tonight, I said, selecting a book from her shelf. As I read about a brave little mouse on a grand adventure, I wondered what stories I would someday tell Lily about her grandfather. Would they be tales of reconciliation, of forgiveness, of the loving man I'd known in my childhood? Or would they be cautionary tales about pride and stubbornness? After Lily drifted off to sleep, I settled at the kitchen table with my laptop once again. I had emails to send, arrangements to finalize. The plan I'd been working on for months was coming together faster than expected, accelerated by my father's rejection. My phone buzzed with a text from Barrett. Can't make child support this month. Company restructuring. We'll make it up next month. I set the phone down without responding. It was the third month in a row he'd used this excuse. The company restructuring seemed perpetual, as did his promises to make it up next month. The divorce had been finalized 2 years ago, but the emotional aftermath lingered like smoke after a fire. Barrett had been charming, ambitious, and utterly unfaithful. The business investments that had emptied our savings had mostly gone to weekend getaways with various women, expensive gifts for his favorites, and a lifestyle he couldn't afford but desperately wanted to project. When I'd finally discovered the truth, finding credit card statements for jewelry I'd never received, hotel charges in cities he'd never mentioned visiting, the confrontation had been surprisingly anticlimactic. Barrett had simply shrugged, as if being caught in multiple affairs was a minor inconvenience rather than the destruction of our family. We're different people now, Alara, he'd said, not even attempting to deny the evidence. I need more excitement, more freedom. You're so focused on stability, on building this perfect little life. It's suffocating. Our perfect little life had included a home we'd renovated together, careers we'd built side by side, and a daughter we'd both claimed to want. But somewhere along the way, Barrett had decided that commitment was a cage rather than a foundation. The divorce proceedings revealed even more. Hidden accounts, debts in my name I hadn't known about, investments that existed only on paper. By the time it was over, I'd lost not only my husband, but also my financial security, my home, and, it seemed, my father's respect. Thaddeus Castleton had never approved of Barrett, though he'd hidden it well during our engagement and early marriage. There's something untrustworthy about that boy, he'd mutter after Barrett left the room. But when the divorce became inevitable, my father's disapproval shifted to me. In his view, marriage was a commitment that transcended personal happiness. His own marriage to my mother had been far from perfect, but they'd remained together until her death 15 years ago. Marriage isn't about being happy every minute, Alara, he'd lectured when I told him about my decision to file for divorce. It's about honor, commitment, working through the difficult times. He cheated, Dad. Repeatedly, he lied. He put us in debt. So you work through it. You don't just quit because it got hard. This isn't about quitting. This is about self-respect, about creating a healthy environment for Lily. Children need both parents. A stable home. There was nothing stable about living with Barrett, but my father couldn't or wouldn't see it. In his eyes, the failure of my marriage reflected a failure of character. The fact that I'd chosen to leave rather than stay and work it out only confirmed his assessment. The irony, of course, was that I'd learned about commitment from him, watching him care for my mother through her illness, observing his dedication to his work, his family, his principles. I'd thought he would understand that sometimes the most principled choice was to walk away from a situation that had become poisonous. I was wrong. My phone rang, interrupting my thoughts. Cordelia's name flashed on the screen again. You won't believe what just happened, she said without preamble. Dad just called me, absolutely frantic. He got some kind of official-looking document in the mail about the house. He thinks it might be foreclosure paperwork. My heart skipped a beat. What did it say exactly? I don't know. He was rambling and upset. Something about liens and release of encumbrances. He said he was going to call his lawyer in the morning. The lien release. It had been processed faster than expected. While it was good news, confirmation that my father's gambling debt was officially cleared, the timing was problematic. I'd planned to be the one to explain everything to him after I'd put the rest of my plan in motion. Did he ask about me? I couldn't help but wonder if my absence had registered at all. Actually, yes. He asked if I'd spoken to you, if you seemed unusual lately. Unusual? His word, not mine. I think he's connecting whatever this document is to your visit yesterday. The timing has him suspicious. I closed my eyes, trying to think. What did you tell him? That you'd returned his keys and seemed upset about being uninvited to his birthday. Nothing about your mysterious other options or whatever you were hinting at. Thanks. I hesitated. Cord, if he calls you again, just don't tell him you spoke to me tonight, okay? I need a little time to figure some things out. Elle, what's going on? You're starting to worry me. It's nothing bad, I promise. Just some arrangements I've been making. Dad will understand soon enough. That sounds ominous. It's not. Trust me. After we hung up, I sat in the silence of my kitchen, weighing my options. The lien release arriving early had accelerated my timeline. My father would start asking questions, connecting dots. It would be better if I controlled the narrative, revealed the truth on my terms. But I wasn't ready. Not yet. Not until I had everything in place. The next day passed in a blur of work, childcare, and finalizing details for my plan. By the time I picked Lily up from preschool, I was exhausted, but determined. Mommy, can we go to the park? Lily asked as we walked to our car. Miss Penelope taught us a new game with a parachute, and I want to show you. Not today, sweetheart. We need to go straight home. I have some important work to finish. But Mommy, you promised. Had I? The days blended together sometimes, responsibilities and promises tangling like threads in a complicated tapestry. I'm sorry, Lily. Tomorrow, okay? I promise, really promise, we'll go tomorrow after school. Her disappointment was evident, but she nodded with a maturity beyond her years. Another sacrifice in a growing list, another small betrayal in the name of necessity. At home, I settled Lily with a coloring book at the kitchen table while I made dinner and checked my emails. There was a message from my realtor confirming that the offer had been accepted. The small house on Maple Tree Lane, modest but charming, with a fenced yard and a good school district, would be ours if the financing came through as expected. I'd been saving every spare penny for 3 years, building a down payment fund while simultaneously paying off my father's debts. It had meant no vacations, no new clothes, no luxuries of any kind. It had meant working weekends when Lily was with Barrett. On the rare occasions when he actually took her for his scheduled visitation, It had meant exhaustion and sacrifice, and a singular focus on creating stability for my daughter. And now finally it was within reach. My phone rang, and my father's name appeared on the screen. I stared at it, heart racing. This was the call I'd been expecting and dreading in equal measure. "Lily, can you go play in your room for a few minutes? Mommy needs to take an important call." She gathered her crayons without complaint, another small indication of how accustomed she'd become to accommodating my needs. I waited until her bedroom door closed before answering. "Hello, Dad." "Ilara." His voice was tight, controlled. "I need to speak with you, in person. Tonight." "I can't tonight. I have Lily and—" "This is important, Ilara. It concerns the family home." I gathered as much from Cordelia. "She said you received some kind of document?" "Yes, and I think you know exactly what it is." My pulse quickened. "Why would I know anything about your mail?" "Because this document references payments made by Ilara S. Castleton over the past 5 years, payments I never authorized or knew about." There it was, the beginning of the conversation I'd been both preparing for and postponing. "Dad, it's complicated. I can't discuss it over the phone, especially not with Lily in the next room. Then bring her with you. Or get a sitter. I don't care how you manage it, but I expect to see you at the house in 1 hour. That's not possible. I can come tomorrow evening." "This isn't a negotiation, Ilara." 1 hour. The line went dead. I stared at the phone, anger and frustration building. Even now, even after rejecting me and my child, my father still expected immediate compliance with his demands. But I was no longer the daughter desperate for his approval. I was a mother with responsibilities, a woman with a plan, an adult making my own choices, and right now, I chose to prioritize my daughter's routine over my father's demands. I texted him, "Cannot make it tonight. Will come tomorrow at 7 p.m. after Lily is with her father for the weekend. This is not negotiable." His response came almost immediately. "The matter is urgent." "It's waited 5 years. It can wait 1 more day." There was no further response. I returned to making dinner, my mind racing. Tomorrow's conversation would change everything. My relationship with my father, his understanding of the past 5 years, perhaps even his view of me as a daughter and a person. I needed to be prepared, emotionally and practically. After Lily was in bed, I spread my documentation across the kitchen table. Payment records, correspondence with Halloran Financial, the original discovery of my father's gambling debts, the lien against the house, 5 years of secrets and sacrifices, laid out in black and white. It had started innocently enough. After my mother's death, I'd offered to help my father organize her papers and accounts. He'd been lost without her. They'd been married for 40 years, and she'd handled most of their financial matters. While sorting through files in his study, I discovered statements from accounts I didn't recognize, correspondence from creditors, notices of missed payments. At first, I thought they might be mistakes or perhaps old accounts that had been closed. But as I dug deeper, a disturbing pattern emerged. My father, the pillar of financial responsibility in our family, had a gambling problem that had spiraled out of control after my mother's death. Online poker, casino visits disguised as business trips, loans from questionable sources, all hidden beneath a veneer of respectability and routine. Most alarmingly, he'd taken out a second mortgage on the family home to cover his debts, putting our heritage, the house that had sheltered 4 generations of Castletons, at risk. I confronted him, of course. The argument that followed was like nothing we'd ever experienced. My father, always composed and dignified, raged and wept by turns. He denied, deflected, then finally broke down and admitted the truth. He'd been lonely, depressed after losing my mother. The gambling had started as a distraction and become an obsession. "You can't tell anyone," he'd insisted. "Not Cordelia, not anyone. It would destroy our family name. Your mother would be so ashamed. I'd promised to keep his secret, but I couldn't promise to ignore the problem. The debt was substantial, nearly $200,000, and the terms of the loans were predatory. If payments weren't made, we would lose the house within a year. I'll figure it out, he'd assured me. I just need some time. But his solution involved taking even more risks, investments in questionable ventures, borrowing from one source to pay another, a financial shell game that was destined to collapse. So I'd taken matters into my own hands. Using my legal training, I'd negotiated with creditors, consolidated debts, set up payment plans. I'd used my own savings as down payments, taken extra jobs to make monthly payments, lived far below my means to divert every spare dollar toward clearing my father's debts, all without his knowledge or consent. I'm handling it, he'd say whenever I tried to discuss the situation. A Castleton pays his debts. I don't need my daughter to rescue me, but he did need rescuing, whether he admitted it or not. So I'd continued my clandestine financial campaign, watching from a distance as my father gradually regained his emotional footing, stopped gambling, and returned to some semblance of his former self. He'd assumed his debts were being managed through his own efforts, budget adjustments, overtime at work, the modest inheritance he'd received from an aunt. He had no idea that I was the one preventing financial catastrophe. And then, just as I'd nearly completed my 5-year payment plan, my own life had imploded. Barrett's infidelity, our divorce, the financial strain of single parenthood. Suddenly, I was the one in need of help. A small, temporary loan to bridge the gap between jobs or to cover a security deposit on a better apartment. Nothing compared to what I'd done for my father. His response had been swift and brutal. Judgment, condemnation, rejection. Now, sitting at my kitchen table with the evidence of my 5-year secret scattered before me, I wondered how tomorrow's revelation would change things. Would my father be grateful for my intervention, angry at my deception, humbled by the realization that his disgrace of a daughter had saved his beloved family home? I gathered the papers carefully, organized them chronologically, and placed them in a folder. Whatever happened tomorrow, I would approach the conversation with dignity and clarity. I would not allow my father's judgment to diminish what I'd accomplished, not only for him, but for myself and for Lily. The next evening, I dropped Lily off at Barrett's apartment for his weekend visitation. His new girlfriend answered the door. A woman barely older than the interns at his company, wearing a shirt that probably cost more than my monthly grocery budget. "Barrett's on a call," she explained, chewing gum and checking her phone simultaneously. "But he said to tell you he'll be out in a minute." I handed over Lily's backpack. "Everything she needs for the weekend is in here. Medication for her allergies, favorite pajamas, the stuffed rabbit she can't sleep without." The woman, Trixie, Dixie, I couldn't remember, nodded absently. "Cool, cool. We're going to have so much fun, aren't we, Lily Pad?" Lily looked up at me, uncertainty in her eyes. "Mommy, are you sure you can't come to the aquarium with us? We've talked about this, sweetheart." "This is your time with Daddy. I'll see you Sunday evening, and you can tell me all about the fish you saw." Barrett appeared finely, dressed casually but expensively, the way he always was these days. "Hey, champ." He scooped Lily up, all performance and no substance. "Ready for our big aquarium adventure?" "Uh-huh. Can Mommy come too?" Barrett's smile faltered. "No, honey. This is our special daddy-daughter time. Plus, Alexis is coming with us." Ah, Alexis, not Trixie or Dixie. She knows all about fish. She used to work at a pet store. The comparison between an aquarium and a pet store seemed lost on Barrett, but I bit my tongue. This wasn't the time for corrections or arguments. "Have fun," I said, kneeling to hug Lily goodbye. "Be good for Daddy, and I'll see you Sunday." "I will," she promised, though the uncertainty hadn't left her eyes. "I love you, Mommy. I love you too, baby, more than all the stars in the sky." It was our special saying, a ritual that seemed to comfort her. She nodded, squared her small shoulders, and turned to take Barrett's hand. As I walked back to my car, I heard Alexis ask, "So, that's your ex?" Huh, not what I expected. I didn't wait to hear Barrett's response. The drive to my father's house took me through familiar neighborhoods, past landmarks that had framed my childhood, the park where I'd learned to ride a bike, the library where I'd spent rainy afternoons, the ice cream shop where we'd celebrated good report cards. Each place held memories of a time when my father had been my hero, my strongest supporter, the man who'd taught me about integrity and perseverance. Ironic, considering the secrets we'd both kept. I parked in the driveway, noting that my usual spot, just to the right of the garage, was now occupied by my father's new car, a luxury model he'd purchased last year. Another indication that he believed his financial troubles were behind him. They were, but not for the reasons he thought. I gathered my folder of documentation and approached the front door. For the first time in my life, I had to ring the doorbell at my childhood home. My father answered promptly, as if he'd been waiting just inside. At 70, Thaddeus Castleton was still an imposing figure, tall and lean, with silver hair cut precisely and eyes that seemed to evaluate everything they fell upon. Today, those eyes were wary, calculating. "Lara." He stepped aside to let me enter. "Thank you for coming." His politeness was formal, a far cry from the warm greetings of years past, or even the cold dismissal of our last meeting. This was the tone he used with business associates when negotiations were tense but necessary. I followed him to his study, the room where I'd first discovered his gambling debts. Nothing had changed. The same leather chairs, the same heavy desk, the same photographs on the walls, family portraits, professional achievements, visual reminders of the Castleton legacy. "Sit down." He gestured to one of the chairs across from his desk. Not the sofa where family would normally sit, but the chair reserved for visitors. The message was clear. I was no longer family. I was an outsider. I sat, placing my folder on my lap. "You wanted to talk about the document you received." "Yes." He reached into his desk drawer and withdrew a legal-sized envelope. "This arrived 2 days ago. It appears to be a lien release for the house, referencing a debt I supposedly incurred 5 years ago and have now paid in full." He slid the document across the desk. I didn't need to look at it. I knew exactly what it contained. "But here's the curious part," he continued. "It states that the final payment was made by Elara S. Castleton, you, and that all previous payments were also made by you, a debt I have no recollection of incurring, being paid by a daughter who claims to be struggling financially." His tone was measured, but I could sense the anger and confusion beneath it. "You know exactly what debt this refers to, Dad?" I met his gaze steadily. "The second mortgage you took out to cover gambling debts after Mom died?" He flinched visibly, the first crack in his composed exterior. "That was a private matter that I resolved years ago." "No, it was a private matter that I resolved years ago. You just didn't know it." I opened my folder and removed the first set of documents, the original loan agreement, the predatory terms, the threatening letters from creditors. 5 years ago, I discovered that you had taken out a second mortgage on this house to cover gambling debts of approximately $200,000. The terms were exploitative, the interest rates nearly criminal. You were 3 months behind on payments, and foreclosure proceedings were about to begin. My father's face had gone pale, his hands gripping the arms of his chair. "I told you I was handling it." "You weren't handling it. You were making it worse with risky investments and more borrowing." So I stepped in. I laid out the next set of documents, my negotiated payment plan with Halloran Financial, the reduced principal, the more reasonable terms. I used my legal training to negotiate better terms. I consolidated the debt, got the interest rate reduced, and set up a payment plan that would clear the debt in 5 years without risking the house. Without my knowledge or consent, my father interjected, finding his voice. You went behind my back. Yes, I did. Because you refused to accept help openly, even as you were drowning financially. Your pride was more important to you than practical solutions. It wasn't about pride. It was about responsibility. A man handles his own problems, even if it means losing the family home, even if it means destroying a legacy you claim to value above all else. He had no immediate answer for that. I continued, laying out the payment records year by year. For 5 years, I have been making monthly payments to clear your debt. I took extra jobs, lived in a smaller apartment than necessary, cut every possible expense. I did this while working full-time, going through a divorce, and raising Lily alone. If you were doing all this, why ask me for money the other day? Why claim to be struggling? Because I am struggling, Dad. The final payment to clear your debt was substantial, nearly $20,000. It depleted my savings just as I'm trying to secure housing for Lily and me. The loan I asked for was a fraction of what I've paid on your behalf, and it would have been temporary. My father stood abruptly and walked to the window, his back to me. For several long moments, he said nothing, just stared out at the carefully manicured lawn that had been his pride for decades. Why didn't you tell me? He asked finally, his voice quieter than before. I tried at first. You refused to discuss it. You said, and I quote, "A Castleton pays his debts. I don't need my daughter to rescue me, so I stopped trying to discuss it openly and just did what needed to be done. For 5 years. Yes." He turned back to face me. And now you expect, what? Gratitude? Reimbursement? The question stung, though I should have expected it. I expect nothing, Dad. I didn't do this for recognition or repayment. I did it because this house matters to our family, because your financial stability matters, because you're my father, and that still means something to me, even if I apparently mean very little to you now. That's not fair, Alara. Isn't it? You called me a disgrace. You said you were ashamed of me. You refused to even acknowledge your granddaughter. All because I chose not to remain in a marriage that was destroying me. Marriage is a commitment. So is parenthood, I interrupted, my composure finally cracking. So is family. But when I needed your support, emotional or financial, you turned your back on me. Even as I was secretly paying off the debt that would have cost you this house, you judged me for needing help. My father returned to his chair, suddenly looking older, the weight of realization settling on his shoulders. I didn't know. Of course you didn't. That was the point. You were so determined to maintain this image of the perfect Castleton legacy that you couldn't admit you needed help. And I was so determined to protect that legacy for you that I sacrificed years of financial security to fix your mistakes quietly. And now you've come to collect. His tone held resignation rather than accusation. No, I've come to return this. I pulled the lien release from my folder and placed it on his desk. The house is clear of all encumbrances. The debt is paid in full. What you do with that information is up to you. I stood, gathering my remaining documents. I should go. Lily is with her father for the weekend, and I have appointments with realtors tomorrow. I'm hoping to find a small house in a good school district, something stable for Lily's future. My father looked up sharply. You're buying a house? Trying to. I've been saving for a down payment while paying off your debt. It's taken longer than expected, but I'm close. Where? Does it matter? You made it clear you want nothing to do with us. He flinched again, this time more visibly. Ilara, please sit back down. I think we need to continue this conversation. I've said what I came to say. Please? The words seemed to cost him something. There's more I need to understand. Reluctantly, I resumed my seat. What else do you want to know? Everything. How you discovered the debt, how you managed the payments, why you kept it secret all this time. So I told him. I described finding the statements, confronting him, watching his initial anger turn to shame and denial. I explained the payment plan I'd negotiated, the extra jobs I'd taken, the sacrifices I'd made. I detailed the monthly transfers, the account I'd set up specifically for this purpose, the careful tracking of every dollar. Throughout my explanation, my father remained silent, his expression shifting from disbelief to understanding to something that might have been remorse. "And Barrett?" he asked when I'd finished. "Did he know about any of this?" "No. It was between you and me. I kept it separate from our family finances, which turned out to be fortunate since Barrett was busy depleting our savings for his business investments that were actually funding affairs with at least 3 different women." My father winced. "I never liked him." "You made that clear from the beginning. But you also made it clear that I was supposed to stay in the marriage regardless of his behavior. I was wrong." The admission seemed to surprise him as much as it surprised me. About Barrett, about the divorce, about many things, it seems.
It wasn't an apology, not exactly, but it was more acknowledgement than I'd expected.
"Why didn't you tell me when I rejected your request for help?" he asked. "Why not throw it in my face then? Tell me I owed you for saving this house? Because that wasn't why I did it. I didn't pay off your debt to create an obligation. I did it because it was the right thing to do, because family helps family, even when it's difficult, even when it's thankless. The way I should have helped you." "Yes." My father stood again, but this time he moved around the desk to stand directly in front of me. "Alara, I don't know what to say. Thank you seems woefully inadequate. I'm sorry. Even more so. You don't need to say anything, Dad. Just think about what family really means. Think about what you want your relationship with Lily to be. She loves you, even though she barely knows you. She deserves better than a grandfather who rejects her because her mother made choices he disagrees with. She does deserve better." He hesitated. "Do you think she would want to come to my birthday party next weekend?" "Both of you?" It wasn't forgiveness exactly. It wasn't a full reconciliation or a complete acknowledgement of how deeply his rejection had hurt. But it was a beginning, a small opening where there had been only a wall before. "I think she would like that," I said carefully. "She made you a card, you know. It has a lot of glitter." A ghost of a smile crossed his face. "I always did like glitter." Then, more seriously, "Ilara, about the house you're trying to buy, I want to help." "Dad, you don't need to." "I do need to, not just because of what you've done for me, but because it's what family does. You taught me that, apparently." 3 days later, my father called me in tears. Not the angry, confused tears of our confrontation, but something softer, more vulnerable. "I didn't know," he kept saying. "I didn't know what you'd done, what you'd sacrificed. All while I was judging you, pushing you away. I didn't know that you were saving everything I valued while I was treating you like a failure." It was the closest thing to an apology I'd ever heard from Thaddeus Castleton, a man who prided himself on always being right, always being strong, always being the one others leaned on. "Dad, it's okay. You know now." I was sitting in my car outside the realtor's office, about to sign papers for an offer on a small house that was at the very top of my budget. "It's not okay. It's very far from okay." He paused. "I've spoken with Cordelia. I told her everything, the gambling, the debt, what you did. She was shocked, doesn't begin to cover it. You didn't need to do that." "Yes, I did. I've spent too long hiding behind this image of perfection, this Castleton legacy nonsense. It's cost me too much already, nearly cost me my relationship with you and Lily. I hadn't expected this level of self-reflection from my father. It was as surprising as it was welcome." "Where are you now?" he asked. "At the realtor's office. I'm about to make an offer on a house." "Don't!" His tone was suddenly urgent. "Don't sign anything yet." "I'm coming to you. We need to talk first. Dad, I can't delay this. There are other interested buyers, and—" "Alara, please. Give me 20 minutes. This is important." I sighed, checking my watch. "Fine. 20 minutes. I'll wait in the coffee shop next door." 18 minutes later, my father's car pulled into the parking lot. He spotted me through the coffee shop window and hurried inside, looking uncharacteristically disheveled. "Thank you for waiting," he said, sliding into the seat across from me. He placed a folder on the table between us, similar to the one I'd brought to our meeting, but with the Thornfield Drake and Associates logo embossed on the cover. "What's this?" I asked, puzzled by the familiar law firm logo. "I spoke with Maxwell Thornfield yesterday. He's an old friend, as you know." "Yes, and my boss." "Dad, what did you do?" "Nothing inappropriate. I just asked his advice on a legal matter concerning family property." My father opened the folder, revealing what appeared to be property transfer documents. "The family home, Alara. I want to transfer half ownership to you." I stared at him, certain I'd misheard. "You want to what?" "Transfer half ownership of the house to you. It should have been done years ago, after your mother died. She always intended for the house to pass to both you and Cordelia eventually." "But what about Cordelia? Shouldn't she get half as well?" "We've discussed it. She doesn't want the house, never has. She's happy in Chicago with her family, with no plans to return here. She agrees completely that you should have half ownership now and full ownership eventually." "Dad, I don't understand." "Just days ago, you could barely look at me. Now you want to give me half of your house?" "Our house," he corrected. "And it's not a gift. It's recognition of what's already true. You saved that house from foreclosure. You preserved the Castleton legacy that I nearly destroyed. You deserve to share in what you protected." "I didn't do it for ownership rights." "I know that, which is exactly why you deserve them." He pushed the folder closer to me. "There's more. The property includes the carriage house at the back of the lot. It's been used for storage for years, but it could be renovated into a lovely small home. For you and Lily." My mind raced, trying to process what he was proposing. "You want us to live in the carriage house?" "If you want to. It would need work, but it has potential. 2 bedrooms, a small kitchen, its own entrance. You'd have privacy, independence, but also family nearby. Lily would have a yard to play in, a stable home in a good school district, and you would have your family close," I observed, finally understanding part of his motivation. "Yes," he admitted without hesitation. "I've wasted too much time pushing you away, missing Lily's early years. I don't want to waste any more." I studied the documents, noting that everything appeared legally sound. Maxwell Thornfield had done a thorough job preparing the transfer. "This is a lot to take in," I said finally. "I need time to think." "Of course. But perhaps delay the offer on the other house, just until you've had time to consider all options." I nodded slowly. "I can do that." 2 weeks later, I stood in the partially renovated carriage house, watching as Lily explored what would soon be her bedroom. The transformation had begun almost immediately after I agreed to my father's proposal. Contractors, painters, electricians, all working quickly to make the space livable. "Look, Mommy! I can see Grandpa's garden from my window," Lily called, her excitement palpable. Since my father's birthday party the previous weekend, where he had proudly introduced Lily to his friends as my brilliant granddaughter, she had blossomed in his attention. "It's perfect, isn't it?" my father said, appearing in the doorway behind me. He had been overseeing the renovations personally, insisting on the highest quality materials and craftsmanship. "It's coming along nicely," I agreed, "though I still think the budget is excessive." "Nonsense. Consider it 5 years of interest on payments you never should have had to make." I smiled, still adjusting to this new version of my father, more open, more willing to acknowledge mistakes, more visibly affectionate with both me and Lily. "Have you spoken with Barrett about the new arrangement?" he asked, lowering his voice so Lily wouldn't hear. "Yes, he's fine with it, or claims to be. I think he's just relieved that I'm not asking for an increase in child support to cover housing costs. That man has always been remarkably skilled at avoiding responsibility." "Dad," I warned, "we agreed to keep the Barrett comments to a minimum." "Right, right." "For Lily's sake." He glanced toward the bedroom where Lily was now arranging stuffed animals on the window seat. "Though I maintain that she deserves better than a father who treats visitation like an optional activity." Before I could respond, my phone buzzed with a text from Cordelia. "Flight lands at 3 tomorrow. Can't wait to see the carriage house transformation. Does Dad still cry every time Lily calls him Grandpa?" I chuckled, showing the message to my father. "I do not cry every time," he protested. "Just occasionally, when I think about how close I came to missing out on knowing her." "And me?" I teased. His expression grew serious. "Especially you. I almost lost my brilliant girl because I was too stubborn to see what was right in front of me, that you are the strongest, most principled Castleton of us all." It wasn't a perfect resolution. There were still moments of tension, disagreements about parenting styles, the occasional flare of my father's judgmental tendencies. But there was also healing, understanding, and a new foundation built on honesty rather than appearances. As we stood in the doorway of what would soon be our home, I reflected on the journey that had brought us here. 5 years of secret payments, of sacrifice and struggle had ultimately led not just to financial freedom, but to emotional liberation as well. My father had called me a disgrace, had rejected me and my child in a moment when we most needed support. But in that rejection, he hadn't known the truth, that I had spent years silently saving the legacy he cherished, protecting him from his own mistakes, preserving not just a house, but the foundation of our family's future. And in learning that truth, he had found his way back to being the father I remembered, the grandfather Lily deserved, and the man who had once taught me that family was worth any sacrifice.
Sometimes it seemed the greatest gifts come wrapped in the hardest lessons.